Well, good morning, everyone. Hope you're doing great. It's been unreal connecting with so many of you around the grounds the last couple of weeks, and thanks for reaching out. Those that have, it's cool to hear. It's cool, obviously, to connect with people and try and encourage and support people that are maybe doing it tough. But it's also been unbelievable just hearing some of the good stories, and sometimes it's just the small stories too that are so encouraging. So please keep sharing them. We love it. We love to be able to just do this together. And we want to, as we say every week, we want to make sure that in this season and beyond this season, that you just have access to a great community of like-minded people that can stand with you, pray with you, encourage you, and hopefully inspire you towards everything that God's got for you. So really excited. This morning, we have a cool morning lined up, actually. We're going to pack a lot into the next 45 minutes. First of all, I'm going to ask a good friend of mine to share something cool that's been happening in his life and business in just a moment. But and then we're going to do something a bit different. Typically, where we have one person share, we're going to. I'm just going to mute that person. Actually, Paulie, if you could mute him. We're actually going to do a panel of 3 people. So 3 people I look up to and admire a lot. I'll introduce them in a moment. But I want to introduce, first of all, Sam, good friend of mine, Sam. Sam, do you want to tell us where you're from? Give us a little snapshot of who you are. And then would love if you could just inspire us with that story you were telling me last week.
Sure, thanks, Dan. Mate, I also want to say, I'm so grateful for the way you've been hosting this group, because it's been one of the major inputs that we've had in our life, apart from church. During the week, it's been so significant, and we're loving it. Well, a little bit about me. I'm based in the southwest of Sydney. We have a relatively small business in construction. We specialise in flooring, so epoxy floors, polished concrete, all that sort of stuff. And yeah, that's what we do. A little bit of our recent stories coming into February this year. We had lined up a relatively large project, and it was going to keep us occupied for at least 10 weeks. When all of a sudden, like many of us have experienced, this whole coronavirus hit. The company we're about to jump in with hit the pause button and left a 10-week gap in our schedule, which hit us really hard. We were scrambling for work, trying to lock projects up, and it's just tricky in the building industry to sort of fill those gaps immediately. So the hit was hard, created a bit of stress and tension. Tension's good, I've been hearing. So yeah, we've been dealing with it. Yeah, I spend a lot of time in my office trying to work out, okay, how can we trim back? What can we cut out of business that we don't need? How can we make it a bit more lean? And the scripture popped in my head, and I started reading, and it's Mark 4:24 and 25 out of the Message. And it says, "Listen carefully to what I'm saying, and be wary of shrewd advice that tells you how to get ahead in the world on your own. Giving, not getting, is the way." Again, giving, not getting, is the way. Generosity begets generosity. Stinginess impoverishes. And it really hit me hard, that scripture. And straight after that, 2 very significant things happened. They're very simple, but significant for us. 2 very simple things happened that really impacted our business and our family. And one of them was, because we had all this spare time and no work, we live on acreage. I said to my son, right, this is a great chance to get some work done around the property. Let's clear some of these logs and timber that's around. So we started chopping wood up. What better way to clear your head? So I've got this chainsaw going, and I'm chopping it up. My son's stacking it, who's 12, stacking it on a pallet. And because I was getting tired of chopping wood towards the end of the day, the pieces are getting bigger and bigger. And I stopped because I saw my son trying to pick up this heavy log and trying to stack it on a pallet. And he was struggling with it, so I thought I better go help him. I made my way to him and he said, "No, Dad, I can do it. I can do it. 12-year-olds can do everything, apparently." So he's still trying and struggling with this log. And he said, "I can do it, Dad." And I said, "Mate, you sure?" And he said, "No, it's too heavy. Can you lift it for me?" So anyway, I grabbed it, stuck it on the pallet. And just that moment, I think I had a God thought, like God speaking to me clearly. It says, "Sam, if you're prepared to step aside, I'm prepared to carry what you're carrying and take the load." And I thought, oh, how good is that? And it was a moment where I sort of had to realize that I need to surrender some stuff to God and step aside. Even though, probably like my son, I think I can carry it all. I just had to learn to step aside and surrender. So that was one of the first simple things that happened. The second thing was, with all this free time, and I'm trying to work out how to trim the business up, I thought, you know what, we need to think about business the other way around at the moment. This would be a great time, rather than shrink back, it'd be a great time to bless somebody and let's go and do a job for free. Now, at this stage, I've got people that work for us on holidays, so it's just me. I thought, well, let's go and bless someone with a job. I rang up one of my guys who we had to put him on holidays. He was on holidays. I said, "Mate, just putting it out there, but we're going to go do a project for somebody, and it's a love job." He said, "I'm in. Get me out of the house. I'm in." So I thought, great, let's do this. So anyway, we did a small project for someone, blessed somebody, and they were really appreciative, and it all went well. And I remember that day, which is only a few weeks ago now, driving home. I was only halfway home when my phone started ringing non-stop, and I thought, I better get this. So the first phone call was a T1 builder that I've been trying to get in the door with and try and pick up some of their work. And they said, "Sam, this is a random call, but I don't know if you have any resources at the moment, but we've got this project and we'd love for you to jump in on it as quickly as possible." And I thought to myself, like, let me think about it. Let me see what I can do. I'm sure I can pull some strings. Cut a long story short, all of a sudden that project became live and we jumped on that straight away. More phone calls kept coming in, small size projects, medium size projects, out of the blue. Driving home, all these projects, all these builders started bringing up, and basically no more gaps, no more days home, no more free time. We're just flat out at the moment. And I say all that, I want to probably encourage people on this group that, you know what, sometimes we think we can carry it all. We think we're super capable, but amazing things can happen if we're prepared to surrender what we got, our struggles, our everyday living, to God. If we're just prepared to surrender it to Him, it basically means that we're creating space for God to come in and intervene. And secondly, probably, generosity begets generosity. You know what? This time is no time to shrink back. Our generosity actually creates space for God to move in and multiply. So, you know what? That's my little simple couple of things that where we've been, where we're going. No more free time for chopping wood. We're flat out now. So, you know what? Seize the moment.
So good, Sam. And when I heard that story, I actually heard it not from Sam. Someone else told me about Sam. And, I love it because Sam's that kind of guy who just, something like that will happen. And, he'll just keep living. And someone else had actually shared that as a cool story. And it inspired me. I actually thought I run a business as well. And, I've very much been live in with the mindset that said, all right, maybe I need to, and I was, applying wisdom to try and build cash reserves and do different things like that. But I actually made some personal decisions to decide to be a blessing and step out off the back of that. And it's kind of cool. It definitely, I saw someone put in the chat there, so true, put the scripture, those who refresh others will themselves be refreshed. And I just think that change of mindset, it was such an encouragement for me. It actually changed the way I was looking at this season, not trying to hold tight, but looking with a generous eye. So thank you, mate. Thanks for your example, and keep leading the way, keep leading the charge. It's very awesome. Give Sam a shout out in the chat if that inspired you. I know it definitely would have. But moving forward this morning, I mentioned we have 3 incredible people that I'm going to be doing some Q&A with. So a little bit of a Zoom panel. So I've never done a Zoom panel before. So hey, we're just pioneering my Zoom capabilities this morning. But these 3 people have had a great influence on my life personally. They're all involved in business in different capacities, and they're all 3 of them are kingdom builders in our church. It's Dave Bagheri, who Dave stood next to me in my bridal party. He's been a long-time friend, and I'll let Dave introduce himself in a moment. Amanda Tay, who is one of our board members here at Hillsong Australia, and works corporately. And then Peter Groenestyn, who Peter is a great guy. He has been a voice of wisdom into my world since we served at Macquarie campus together a number of years ago, and we've remained great friends. And him, Kim, and even many of you would know his son Jerry is a close friend, incredible family, and Pete's extremely seasoned in business. And so, guys, I might ask Dave, why don't you jump on first? Just say a hello. Maybe just tell us, just in a snapshot, a little bit about who you are, how you fit into our world church-wise, but also just a little bit of your business background.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. It's good to be here. I was just flicking through and just seeing quite a few familiar faces. So good to see you all. Just to be brief, I grew up in Sydney and was part of our church for many years in Sydney and on staff back in 2005 doing city care for a few years. And the last 10 years I've been away. I moved over to Perth about 10 years ago. We supported a microfinance organisation establishing around Australia to help Aboriginal people start businesses, and worked with the mining sector and the oil and gas sector, created industry partnerships to essentially fund the programs and then find ways for some of those businesses to enter supply chains and things like that. So did that and got a bit of a taste for business from that, and felt God leading me towards business. And the last 7 years I've been in London and have been building a company that does workforce management, primarily in the US and Canada, but also in UK and Europe. And we help launch many companies from Europe into the US and manage their workforce for them. And over the last few years, built a technology platform to automate the whole process of engaging a worker, payrolling them, collecting their time, making sure they're compliant in every state of America, which is a bit of a minefield. So that's a bit of what I have been doing. Apart from all of that, I've got 3 kids and a wife. We're living in London currently. We're stuck in Sydney. We came back a couple of months ago just for lockdown and just to be with our family. But it's been really good being here, and I've got some other stuff. I'm really passionate about church. I've got some involvement with church globally and in London, and I've also got quite a lot of interest in community development. So those are sort of the 3 steers that I'd say, church, kingdom, and business that I've sort of tried to maintain the last 15 years of in everything I've done. I've tried to give them equal priority where I can.
Very cool, Dave. Thank you. And are you able to tell people what you're sort of heading up in church at the moment, or is it still sort of been worked out?
Yeah. I've been asked in the last few months to come on board just to help with Joel Houston. We've got a bit of a vision to expand our world into the greater world and influence society and arts and culture. Some of you might have seen, I think Brian announced it at Vision Sunday, IO, Inside Out. So we're at very early stages of putting plans together on that. And I think in the coming months, you know, as a church, we'll hear a lot more about it. But looking at how do we actually get out into the world and use our platform to make a big impact and influence as many people as possible.
Yeah, thanks, mate. I just thought that'd be exciting for a lot of people here. So it's definitely worth a mention. Amanda Tay, do you want to say hello? Just give us a little bit of a snapshot of who you are.
Yeah, sure. And David, that was awesome. I loved hearing that. There's so many cool people in our church. Hey, I'm always sort of overwhelmed. I love it. Yeah. So Amanda Tay, I've come from corporate, which really is you sort of own your own business. I've been in corporate banking for 18 years. This is my 19th, and that does add up very quickly. Currently, I head up the small business team, which is right now pretty frontline. I'm pretty much dreaming of JobKeeper and how we can keep our people and our customers going with 90% of my people at home. There's just a lot to manage at the moment, which is great. I mean, I think it's such an incredible time to be in business as a Christian at the moment, actually. You know, some big calls to make and some really great ways to role model. So do that. And really, I think the whole 18 years has been one of sort of leadership. I would say I do a lot of transformation. That's a big part of what I do because we continually transform to keep alive. And yeah, hugely people leadership, mentorship, but have been in everything from markets to small business to sort of retail to any sort of project work. There's a lot when you work at corporate. I do some work with Dan and FPU, which I've been enjoying that. As I said, on the board on various different bits and pieces in church as it goes round. Do a bit of work in mentoring and women in business outside of all of this as well, which I really, really love. And do a bit of work with sort of younger girls around value and worth, to sort of believe in sisterhood, and you got to see it to believe it. So yeah, keeps me busy.
Love it, Amanda. Amanda's an absolute weapon, and she'll hate me saying this, but she's got like a really cool talk on YouTube. Sorry, I think if you type in Amanda Tay and Spheres, maybe it was back when Spheres existed in our world, but around kingdom finance, and she just has one of the most brilliant minds around kingdom finance stewardship, and it's actually a really great communicator too. So I always tell people to go listen to it because it's so good. But yeah, appreciate you, Amanda.
Thanks, Dan.
Peter G, do you want to jump on, say hello, and introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Dan, and thanks, Dave and Amanda, for your sharing. Yeah, well, I'm 66. Have a wife, Kim. Four great kids. Yeah, some of you probably know one of them, Jerry. 11 grandchildren. So very, very blessed man. I started after a couple of small jobs or different jobs while I was a teenager. I got into the building game and just started as a builder's labourer and finished up, managing home unit sites and had my own builder's license, and which I kept till probably 10 or 12 years ago, just in case I needed it. But then I got into takeaway food packaging distribution, and I started my current business, Sydney Packaging, back in 1988. So I've been doing that now for, 32 years. Yeah, so we employ probably about 45 staff. So working through all the issues of, we haven't had to put anyone off, which is great. And we're just, working through the issues of financing that and waiting for JobKeeper to come through. But luckily, having been there for so long, it's quite a solid business, and we should come through it okay, I think. But yeah, with church, yes, as Dan said, we still go to Macquarie Extensional Campus with Tom and Angela these days, and that's great. We've probably both served in church most of our lives. Before Hillsong, we were very involved in another church, probably more so as our kids became teenagers, getting involved with youth work and running the youth camp, and just had quite a prominent role, I guess, in serving God in church. We came to Hillsong 12 years ago, came to Macquarie, and yeah, it's been such a blessing for us. I mean, the church before was great and, you know, served a purpose, and yeah, we enjoyed it. But to come to Hillsong, to something completely different, to a traditional Brethren church, is very uplifting. And we have done different things at Macquarie, but I guess our main, we just want to be able to support Tom and Ange in particular, but and you know, just kind of step in whatever role they would have us to do. So that's us and me in a nutshell, I think.
Good morning.
Awesome, Pete. Love it. Hey, question for you guys. I want to start with just a couple of practical questions, because I know a lot of people here are business owners. Last week, Pete Lowe got people to put in the chat who was, you know, if they're business owners or maybe worked in a business. But even if people here work in a business, a lot of people might be in management or in a position where you are overseeing employees, maybe sometimes even hiring and firing employees. But I wanted to just throw a question to the three of you, if that's all right, and you can, you know, feel free just to jump in whatever order and answer it. But when it comes to staff members, and I know obviously we've got to, you know, try and be a bit pointed in. Sometimes it's hard to build context towards an answer when you don't have much time, but maybe just a few nuggets of gold when it comes to like identifying and hiring great staff members. All you guys have or do oversee, you know, teams, fairly large teams. Yeah, could either of you speak to that? What are some qualities? What are some things you particularly look for?
I'm happy to go. So go kind of kiss everyone's face, so I don't know who's about to speak or not. Yeah. I mean, I think culturally you've got to know what you're looking for. Technically, you've got to know what you're looking for. I think that the concept for me is that you can always teach skill, but you can't teach will. So really looking for people that are going to be a great cultural fit. I love to really hear what people's why is. So there's a lot of questions I do around that. And when I look for my leaders, like empathy is a huge one. I really need to hear what their story is. I think for me, it's around practice too, right? Often I think, oh, I love you, and I've hired them in the past, and it's just been me interviewing them. One thing I've learned, it's really great to have multiple people to interview, and it's good to interview with someone that maybe thinks a little bit different from you to have an objective view. But for me, I think what it is that culturally I want to see and what I want to build, I really nail in on that. Like they need to care about customers, one. Yeah, that would be my input.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly on the culture thing, Amanda. And yeah, I think you need to set your culture and then try and find people that value that or fit in with that nicely. I think I quite often would look for someone with a great attitude. I think that's one of the places I'd start, because I think if someone has a good attitude and if you know, you have a feeling that they'll fit in with your culture, you can teach them anything. And so I tend to start with attitude, and then yeah, just go through some of the things that Amanda's mentioned. I think if someone has a good attitude, they're quite teachable, and usually you find they fit in. I think going with your gut feeling as well, I've learned to do that. Sometimes you think, oh, I should give this person a go for one reason or other, but your gut tells you it's probably not going to work out, and usually it doesn't. And so I've learned over the time to probably go by my gut feel a bit more as well.
Agree with all of that. I think just the only other thought I'd probably add is the process of hiring. I think often most of my bad hires have not necessarily been that the person's been bad. It's that I hadn't thought through as a leader what I actually needed. So we sometimes rush the process of finding someone because we identify there's a need, but we haven't really thought through what the actual need really is and scoped it out properly in advance. And I think that's where I've got stuck a lot of the time is, and things shift over time. So you do have to be prepared to find people that are flexible and malleable, but you do also need to put the effort in, I think, to actually identify what does the business really need. And if you can do that work up front, often it'll save you on the back end. I've had many times a good person in the wrong role, and you end up that they either get frustrated and leave, or you have to move them on, or you have to find another way to fit them into the business. So that's probably the thing I'd say is, rather than starting with who, start with what you need, and get that right in the first place.
Yeah.
Can I just quickly add, and I don't want to, but I think, I mean, I say to my guys, you know, hiring is one of the number one jobs that you have as a leader. It's pretty much the most critical job, because when you have the right people, everything flows from there. And I think, yeah, as you said, building just to fill a seat will end up costing you in the long run. You're better off waiting for the right person.
Yeah, love that. And I guess even hinging off that, I'd love it if you guys could speak into, like, what should you consider when making changes if you do need to transition someone or move them on or let them go from the business? It's obviously a challenge for a lot of us. I know for me, sometimes I've got an employee I'm not sure about. And you sort of, sometimes even as a Christian, how you navigate that. Thoughts?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. I mean, because we don't have a lot of we don't have a lot of time, I can't probably add the context needed to not make this sound too harsh. But I think you're better off acting quicker than slower when you know that you've got the wrong person. I think sometimes we hesitate and we take months or years to make a decision, and we put it off, and you end up causing more damage in the long run. I found it early on very challenging because I've got a pastoral heart to sort of to do that. But I learned over time, actually, and seeing you know, time and time again, the results of someone being there in the wrong place and the impact it would not only have on the business but on them. And so I can actually now reconcile, as have someone with a pastoral heart, that moving someone on is not necessarily incompatible with my Christian faith. I think it's about releasing people into the right places where they can succeed and where they can be who they are. If they're in the wrong role, it doesn't necessarily mean they're a bad person or they're not. Everyone's got value, you know, but it's just about putting them into the right place. So, and I think then the flip side is just being generous with people when you have made a bad decision, owning the bad decision. I think living with our own consequences, other than, you know, when we do make a poor call, it's ultimately my responsibility. So making sure that we're treating people fairly and generously on the back end, and being supportive of them through the process of transitioning out.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I think, you know, if I think about letting people go or restructuring people out, you know, if you don't find the decision hard, you're not in the right role. If you can't make the decision, you're not in the right role. Point being, it's a hard decision, but you got to make it sometimes. You know, having the wrong person in the role can just really culturally impact you, and other people know it as well. And I think when people aren't in the right role, they know it. I think, you know, when do you let someone go? It depends on what it is. A gross breach, clearly that's a, you know, cultural fit. I mean, often I think if you've coached someone, you've given them time, you've supported them, and they're not responding, then I think that's that time to have that question. And, you know, often it can be a self-selection question, you know, that, hey, mate, you know, how are you feeling? You enjoying this job? Is this what you want to be? Do you see us in the future? And most of the time you do find they say, actually, nah, this is not for me. I'm like, seems like we're on the same page, you know, and just really help them through. And I think, you know, that comment about being a Christian, I think I personally put my hand up to let people go when it needs to happen, because I want to do it over someone else, because I can do it in a way, you can do it in a way that lifts them up, it's about, you've got future somewhere else, just not here. You don't have to pull them down, rip them apart. I think the beauty of a Christian doing it is you can do it in a really godly, graceful way.
I love that. I love that you step in as the leader, because I've been in environments before where, you know, I feel like the leader makes a decision to let someone go, and they're like, hey, can you go do it? And you're sort of not even sure why we're letting them go. And I love that as the leader, you're happy to step in. In fact, you want to actually be the one to step in, because it releases them to the next season and hopefully sends them forward into that. That's brilliant. Love it, Amanda.
I'd just add quickly that when you put someone on, you need to clearly set out what you expect from them. And then I always find it's good just to have that conversation with them when things aren't working out. Bring them back to the conversation you had in the first place. We would quite often give someone an opportunity to correct where they're wrong, or to help them, you know, step to the next level. But just to keep having that conversation, I think is an important thing.
Yeah. Love it, Pete. If maybe such good wisdom around the hiring employment process there from all you guys, might change tact a little bit, sort of move a little bit more towards some personal growth, even professional growth questions, if that's okay. Look, how would you guys, I mean, what are some of the things, I guess, and I'd love to hear from all three of you on this, that you guys do to grow, to take responsibility to grow yourselves professionally?
Growing professionally, yeah. I guess I've not done like the university and all that kind of stuff, and I think, thank God, I'm probably a little bit logical in the way I think and do things. But for me, professionally, I guess I just look to people that I know, that I look up to, you know, make sure I learn from my accountant and things like that. I find in business a lot of things are common sense, and I think using your common sense with the things that you've learned, for me, that's kind of served me well. I have at times thought about doing something more professional, I guess, something with a certificate or something attached to it, but I've never done it, and I think I'm probably not going to start now.
Awesome. I mean, I think, how do I grow personally? I mean, professionally, to probably expand that a little bit. So I think, so one, it's your responsibility. Two, I think who you are is how you lead. And again, why do I say that? Is because we think professionally, we often think I need a leadership book, I need a book around strategic decisions, I need a book around execution. Yes, they're great. But I think, you know, being in the Word will actually help you professionally, because we are sort of our person, our you know, spiritualness, our emotional, but who we are is how we turn up. And I think that's important, because we need to prioritize that, but that actually will help you professionally. And I really believe that. For those of you mentoring courses, you got to be careful with I do a lot of courses. You got to be careful with study, because it can, just for the sake of it, because you can get so busy and you can get run down just by doing that. But I think, how would you grow? What do you need to grow in? Start with that.
Yeah, it's good. I think just for me, it's always been through relationships. So I've always sought out people, and I think you need to be, you know, purposeful about that. For me, even in business, in busiest seasons, running things and doing stuff, I've always made room for relationships. And I think that's where I've learned the most, is actually by sitting down and having coffee with people. And sometimes it's the person you least expect it, you know, has the keys or the tools for something you need. And just through talking to people and seeking out people I admire, I listen to a lot of podcasts. You know, I read books and things like that, but it's been mainly through relationship, and even just sitting in church. I mean, church has been great as far as the leadership structure for me, and getting life spoken into me for 20 years, and that ends up, you know, rubbing off on you into all sorts of areas. But immersing yourself in what you do as well. You're hiring great people. Once you get into leadership roles, you hire great people that are smart, but that doesn't excuse you from actually acquiring the knowledge yourself. So you need to take personal responsibility to immerse yourself in the areas that the disciplines of the business. So you can't outsource that or delegate that down. As a leader, we have to take responsibility for that. But I think for me, number one is development is through relationship.
Yeah.
I love that. Very, very, very cool. I think it was John Dwight. Sorry if this gets to John and it wasn't him, but I think it was John I heard once say that he, for something, he just made the statement. He goes, I hear from God more often than not when I'm just sitting in church. And just being in church, that's where God would speak to him about his business, about his life, about his family. And I just think sometimes we can't undervalue just the core spiritual disciplines that we can do, being in the Word, being in church, in regards to what it brings to every area of our life. And sometimes just that in and of itself is just such a great reminder.
Yeah.
Look, I might hinge and even a little bit off what you were saying, Dave. You know, any one of the three of you are welcome to answer this. But how I speak to a lot of people, and a lot of people here that are seeking out those relationships that you mentioned, Dave, seeking out mentors what advice would you give to someone that's just like, where do I start? How do I find a great mentor? How do I find great people to speak into my life, help shape me, maybe get advice on business, etc.
Yeah, I just on the mentoring thing, I've never actually asked anyone to be my mentor, but I would count many people as my mentor. So I think sometimes we turn the mentoring thing into a formal thing, and I think there's merit in that, but I definitely think it's, you know, people would be, I would associate as mentor for me that would never know that they are playing that role. But I find that people that are further ahead in the journey than I am in different areas, people are willing to share their experiences with someone, especially if they believe that you're receptive, you know. And I do the same thing when people seek me out to have a coffee. You tend to gravitate towards those that are going somewhere and doing something with their life, that have some ambition, that excuse me, that you know that they're going to you know, put the effort in. So and always actually is a humbling thing for me if I can associate to be part of someone else's journey and be part of their success. So I think that's the same thing for me, is when I'm seeking people out, if I'm that person that is very proactive and bold enough to ask, you know, to let's have a glass of wine, let's have a coffee, people are willing to do that. So it's, I think if someone asks me to formally be their mentor, I sit there and go, wow, that's a big commitment. But if someone wants to have a coffee, yeah, I can do that. So I think maybe sometimes it's not necessarily going and finding a formal mentor, but it's actually, you know, gleaning off different people with different attributes that you can build your life in. Some, you know, I've got people who are great with money, and you go and talk to them about money and how to handle your personal finances. Other people great in their craft, and so you just grab and glean from different people. And I think it's just something you have to be really proactive about.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dave. And I think God puts people in your way, people that you can trust, that you feel comfortable with, that you feel at ease with in talking to. And I think I've gained a lot from that kind of a relationship, just on a casual basis like that. But also, probably at my stage in life, I'm conscious that I've learned a few things along the way. And they say that grey hair gives you wisdom. So I'm getting there, but I think a lot more about maybe sharing my story and my experiences with other people. So being available for others at my stage as well.
Yeah, and probably all I'd add is there's not one mentor. It's like there's not one ring to rule them all. You have a whole heap of mentors. You know, I often talk around a board of directors. They're my mentor for my health, and it's knowing what you want. I think is the big part. I mean, I've had mentors in the year. Can you be my mentor? I'm like, or people want me to mentor them, and they don't really know what they want out of it. So you have mentors that may help you with really big life decisions, or mentors that may help you with leadership questions, or just people you're going to sit down and have a coffee with once a quarter, and you walk away and you feel like you want to run a marathon. I think it's a bit of everything. I think the best mentors happen organically and naturally, and you have to respect their time, and you have to do the work, and you have to know what it is that you want. I think that's really big. But if you see people, I think, as you said, they come into your life, you attract them, take that opportunity. Respect people's time, but your mentors are really, really important. And you can get them from podcasts, reading biography, all sorts of stuff, biographies, autobiographies. You can learn a lot. It doesn't just have to be sit down with coffee.
Yeah, I love it. And even the other week, it sort of stuck with me when Kent said, I asked Kent what he sort of did for personal development, and he said, look, I basically just watch Pastor Brian and just learn from his leadership. And Kent's, very, done very well and doing very well, and someone I look up to. And he's like, look, I just, fix my eyes on, fix my eyes on Jesus. Sorry, Kent, keep things centered for you. But he's like, I really watch Pastor Brian and learn from him. And I think we're so blessed to be in a great church. Here's so many testimonies of people that are thriving in business because of just the leadership they've been able to observe from our church. And I think that's something we just constantly need to remember not to take for granted. I think I could add a thought, but I always think that it's always worth, I always try and be a blessing to someone I catch up with. Like, I always make sure, like, first of all, I'm there early, I'm respecting their time. I'm like fighting them to pay. Like, if we're doing lunch, like, I'm not letting them pay. I'm, maybe sending them a little thank you gift afterwards. Like, I want to be a blessing, not a drain. So even if they don't feel like the time in and of itself, if they're a bit unsure about it, I want them to know that it just blessed me. And I've found that's always kept a great flow of people in my life. And by the way, all three of you guys sharing this morning are that for me in some form or another. Every time I catch up with you or spend time with you, I feel inspired. So thank you for being mentors, been relationships that push me forward. I want to ask you guys, how could you maybe speak to, I mentioned before, all of you guys are kingdom builders. All of you guys very much live with a kingdom mindset in business. How does that come together for you? Could you maybe speak a little bit from your heart into that?
Yeah, I like the whole point of being in business to me is it's all the same thing. The point of building church and the point of helping people in community and people in poverty and things like that, it all comes back to the big why, which is actually the Great Commission. So to me, business is an avenue, and I see the point of being in business as a means to actually have an influence on people, but also use resources to build the church. And I think I see the church as a cornerstone of whatever we do. So like finding that depth of meaning within what we do in business, I think being a kingdom builder it's not a giving club or whatever, as we all know. It's actually, it fulfills a part of the whole point of why I'm in business in the first place. So I think without that, am I passionate about workforce management, or am I passionate about technology? Not necessarily. I'm passionate about business in general, but it's because it has a greater purpose, and it's about how do we actually affect people's lives. And I think the church is, the greatest social development program we've got, just to call it that, because people walk in, they walk out different, and a lot of the charity work that we do, which is also important, doesn't necessarily address that spiritual element. So I think the church is the greatest if you look at the impact of people's lives. So that, just from a natural point of view, it's great soil to, get a return on your investment for where you put your money. But bigger than that, it's actually about eternity and things. So I that whole meaning is the whole point of being in business to me. Otherwise I'd give it up straight up and just go and be a pastor or whatever.
I guess for me, I remember when I started Sydney Packaging, I was very conscious of a couple of things. One was that I would love the Lord to bless the business as we went on, and I knew that if I ask for, or if I expect blessing, I need to do things in a right way. So make sure that whatever we do it within the law, and being generous to people, and it's not always easy, but almost like loving people. I guess it's easier in a family business when you can sculpture it how you feel that you should, and within your culture. But the second thing was, I prayed many times, and I still do, Lord, as you bless, let me not remember that what I have is what you've given me on loan to share with others. And I think when we came to Hillsong, I mean, we've always, shared in that sense, but when we came to Hillsong and found out about kingdom builders and that, it just was a perfect fit, that as we grow, as we are blessed, that we can continue to help by feeding into the church through kingdom builders. So that was a good thing.
Yeah.
Pete, Amanda, do you want to bring us home? Final thought for this morning?
Quickly. Yeah. I mean, I think that connection is so important. And what I'd say about that is it's a relationship, and that it's one that is just not, I naturally get it. I think it's one that you should talk to the Lord about it, because I think there's depth and there's layers. And I think, he can speak on it and he can make it fruitful. Over the years, that has just really deepened for me. I mean, I've got a legacy mindset, and I think on how am I going to impact people? And I know people remember how I make them feel, not what I say. And I always think around, when I leave this building, when I leave this role, what have I left behind? And that consumes me. It consumes me around how I deal with people and everything. But my point would be, spend time with the Lord and let that layer deepen, because there's layers to it and there's depth to it, and it doesn't come automatically. Let the Lord water it.
That is so good. Guys, thank you incredibly. This morning's been gold. I feel like we could go 2 hours and just keep drawing off you guys. I personally have been jotting notes here like crazy, and we appreciate you. Amanda, could you pray over this group before we sort of dismiss and people head into their day?
Yeah, sure. Father Lord, I just thank you for this incredible bunch of people, Father Lord. I just thank you for all the gifts and talents you've put on their life. Father Lord, that you'd bless them, Father, you in this moment, bless all their businesses. Lord, let their connections flourish, Father Lord, in all they do. May they have a kingdom mindset and impact people for your glory. We thank you in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thanks again, guys. Please give these guys a clap and make them feel appreciated. Appreciate all you giving the time. And thanks to the whole group for joining this morning. Remember tonight, one of our absolute priorities, something we love to do, is join Pastor Brian Thursday nights to pray. And let's make sure that's front and center. That's just a core part of our weeks in this season, because I know it's going to be really impacting to you and for what you bring as well. So God bless you guys.